I think let's just get straight into it. If you're new to meditation, just let yourself find a place to settle, a place to just be comfortable for around about 20 minutes or so. We'll be going. To somewhere that you can be still. Let's just putting all the books down and things now, the pens, things like that. Smiling at one friend there who's getting comfortable. You know who you are. And it'll be recorded as well. So don't worry about that. So just taking a few breaths, and first start just as you rest into where you are now, just finding that place where you can maybe just do the last little movements that you need to find your favorite space, your little, your little fussy cat movements, whatever they are. You're on the mat, but you got to find that right little spot just yet. Just let that happen. And then once you have that, just find that place, we won't be here for long, that you can be still, and just dedicate yourself to that stillness right now. And whatever's happened in the day or not happened in these COVID times, whatever that is, just letting that be done. Let it be finished. If you could have done something better, you would have. Just let it be enough, whatever you've done for the day. And just gently turning towards the physical sensations in the body, the body itself. And possibly just taking a few breaths to let yourself, let the awareness just gently turn towards the body. And rather than, say, focusing on the breath itself as something there that's a little bit intangible, a little bit hard to focus on, perhaps just notice the whole of the body at the moment and how the body's breathing. And maybe there can be just a simple awareness of that. Very uncomplicated thing to be aware of, the body as it breathes. So we're noticing how the belly might move there as the in-breath comes in, falling on the exhale. And with like inquisitive, just so we can bring just a couple more, say, percentage points of kindness towards the body. A little bit softer with the thoughts, with the intention, without losing power, without losing presence. And just that little bit more open. Kind of like little baby steps in this direction. And as the mind, as the mind softens a little, rather than a sense of collapse, can that be actually an opening to a natural nobility in the spine, a natural opening of the spine, a resting of awareness in the body? It allows the body to be upright, some space, a little bit more space in the back of the neck. Any way the spine might want to unwind, just go ahead and let that happen. And just noting the constantly changing flow of sensation in the body. Kind of like this stream of sensation that's constantly there, changing, moving. And with each breath, softening around those sensations or any attitude we might have towards the body there. And from the Thai forest tradition, there's a very simple mantra that you can use if you feel it's helpful. It's just simply Buddho. Bud, like in Buddha, for awaken, awareness. Ho, like it's almost like just saying awareness. Bud, breathe in, ho on the exhale. And so there's awareness of the body breathing with the inhale, aware of the exhale going out. We're also being aware of awareness itself. You might say mindfulness. Bud, bringing awareness to awareness. And ho, that's just gentle softening. Belly relaxing. Softening the tissues in the body. And just letting go into soft belly. As the belly softens, you may find that the spine can just gently lift by itself a little more. Gently softening the holdings we've perhaps had all day long. Letting go of any sense of how the body should be in a certain way, and just letting ourselves rest with it as it is right now. Buddha. The Thich Nhat Hanh would say it's like we're inviting the Buddha to sit with us. Inviting the Buddha to sit in our spine, to sit here on our cushion with us. Opening to a more kind, present sense of ourselves, and letting any hardness float. This gentle opening of the heart, just holding to nothing, opening, floating. Just letting pain be released. And the healing qualities of the heart, we're just inviting those in. And as the tensions in the mind soften, this literally just letting ourselves rest with this experience of the body as it is now, experience of life as it is here inside of us, with its pains and joys. And holding a compassionate awareness, like a compassionate spaciousness to the whole of who we are, the messiness of our life, the joys of our life, messiness of our relationships and the joys. It's just deepening into soft belly. The softening melts the armor around the heart, the tension in the thoughts. It allows an opening to a natural strength in the belly, a natural strength in the spine that's not forced, it's not hard, it's pliable, malleable, flexible. Just opening to that possibility of the mind being more, just that little bit more malleable, a little bit more flexible, agile, present, spacious. recording. You got it. Thank you. So tonight, actually, while I think of that, I'm just going to post a link to a new course that's just opened up on my website today. Promise of this of Dharma practice is this sense of like will be that the body, mind, spirit will be healed, strengthened, calmed by this path, the Eightfold Path. And hopefully as we practice more, giving the mind a little bit more stability, some strength and focus, that will no longer be swept away by our moods and grudges and phobias, to name a few things. And in the course of this particular teaching, they talk about the floods. These things are the floods of experience. And this is Buddhist metaphor you may know of we'll be standing as we sort of get stronger in a way through these experiences, so they don't knock us off our feet. We'll go to the other shore. If any of you have been on my website, and you might have seen there's a page that is about one-to-one practice with me. You'll see there's a rowboat there. And because no one's ever noticed that that's there or what that's about, I thought I'd point it out tonight. That's why it's there. The other shore is the metaphor that's about. So this healing, then, it's this healing of removing stress, the first noble truth, the dukkha, and that will be, the promise to reach the end of that. So, so what we need to do then, what the path suggests, is that as we go along there, we want to be consistently strengthening, cultivating, and nourishing these certain qualities of being. And part of that is that, we want to become more nuanced about our experience. As we meditate, as we are mindful about life, we're invited to be more nuanced about what's the experience happening there. Well, it's numb. What kind of numbness? Sort of like diving in. The mindfulness part is we're stabilizing the mind, depending on who you talk to. We're just stabilizing to the point where we've got enough strength of mind to then start diving in a little bit more, to hold true as we look deeper at things. So this is the power of mindfulness. So that as we go deeper into those mind states, into the origins, into the deeper place of holding there, there's something there inside of us that doesn't get pushed off, drawn away. So this is the floods of experience. So we have these all these different practices that we use for that. So it's important though that if we just take practice to be this sense of meditation on a sitting cushion or in some other perfect environment, we might find that if we're always depending on a calm, quiet, secluded place to examine the mind, we may find our progress stifled. Yeah. Because our day-to-day life is not like that so much, right? At all, right? Anyone with kids? Yeah, knows that. Jobs, whatever, right? So if that was the only foundation for the path, that things should be quiet and secluded, we'd be in trouble. It'd be quite narrow, the possibilities then. Be only for certain people, secluded monastics or whatever. But the basis of a longer term practice, though, includes a lot more, and in particular, of particular importance for lay people, I think, is the development of these qualities of mind, the parami, course, also be the Brahma Viharas. These qualities of mind that strengthen our life. So in Pali, they're called parami, and you might have also heard of the term paramita, which is the Sanskrit equivalent. So we've always sort of got these two things happening there. Dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A is the Sanskrit, Dhamma, the Pali term. We're always getting these two sort of things, sort of don't get too caught up on that, I think. So these 10 qualities, then, dana is one. Sort of practiced in lots of ways in sequence. They were often given like this. They came, actually, before we go further, they came from around about, they say, a little bit more like 5 centuries roughly after the Buddha. They weren't talked about so much in the sequence from the early suttas. But then as time went on, apparently they were sort of given more weight. So the 10 parami are generosity, morality, meaning how we relate to each other, letting go, wisdom, energy, virya, patience, truthfulness, resolve, aditan. If anyone's done a Goenka Vipassana, you'll know all about that one, the aditan sit. Kindness, loving kindness, metta, sort of a whole Brahma Viharas there, all the qualities of compassion, mudita, and then equanimity. And so like I said before, the part of a larger teaching on these 51 mind states, of which there's like 20 odd beautiful mind states and a number of not so beautiful mind states. I think with all these things, it's important not to get, caught up that this is the only way, that these are the only ones to focus on. There's some of them, some of the things to look at. The Dalai Lama said, that they're not meant to be all inclusive. Nothing here is that black and white. They're just indicative of some of the important things to look at. So they provide a template, in a way, for the mind's energies, the way that we direct the mind in our day-to-day life. Sort of encompasses how we speak, our talking, how we work, relational joy. These are some of the things I've just written down. Our interactions with others, the ways that we might support and encourage ourselves and friends. It can be our times of quiet introspection, the way that we might contemplate our life as well, decision making, and also the forming of life directions. Some people might call it purpose, but the way that as we strengthen these more, then and we listen to the song of the heart, as one friend put it, then the sense of that direction in life is strengthened, supported. And these things, they can be done at any time of day, of course. And ultimately, it's enlightened self-interest here that we're working with. It's not a sense of looking good or anything like that. They're the ones that promote our own joy, our own sense of happiness in life. So one of the teachings about this, I was talking about the floods of life. There's 4 floods in particular they talk about. that cultivating the parami in life, these qualities, there's 4 floods in particular. One's the flood of sensuality, the flood of what's called becoming, the flood of views, and the flood of ignorance. So I'll just say a little bit about those now. Sure, I can keep an eye on the time. So the flood of sensuality is, here when they're talking about flood, they're talking about this energy of the mind that takes us over, can overwhelm us. It's interesting, in anyone knows John Gottman from couples therapy and research. He often talks about flooding there and how we get flooded. We might flood others with what we're talking about and our emotions, the things, we might get flooded internally from certain emotions that overwhelm us. So sensuality then is the sense of how sounds, smells, fragrances, just how the sensual world might overwhelm us, or we get carried away with it as well. And important thing with these things, as always, it's not that those things are wrong at all, but it's more about just seeing how in that flood of experience, and just noticing that they actually don't carry any sense of a permanent satisfaction, a permanent way that they will give a 24/7 result. There's always a point where we've had enough, like of, say, chocolate or well, our favorite foods. There's a point where we say, that's enough. Enough sex, enough whatever, right? We stop. So it doesn't matter how sort of blissful some experience might be, there's a point where it doesn't become like that. It's not like that anymore. And this is kind of like the talk about the wise way of being with these things. The wise way of participating. Thich Nhat Hanh often speaks of, well, before he was incapacitated, but he spoke about wise consumption, the way we consume through the senses. Food, smelling, eyes, things, consuming through the internet, through what we read. So this is a wise way that we can relate to that world. Because pleasure, in a way, always has the opposite there too, at some level in our experience. In relationship, we can relational joy, and yet there's also, as Terry Real, someone I've studied with, says something called normal marital hatred, a place where the partner is just too much, right? It's like, I'm over it. And I see a couple of people smiling at that, and he says that, after 15 years of teaching that, no one has ever asked him what that means, so I think we all know that one, right? So the next one then is called the flood of becoming. And this is where we're getting a bit more into Buddhist jargon here, becoming, if you're not familiar with that. It's about how we set in mind something to become something in the future. Might be the simplest way of thinking about it. And so that could be the desire, in a way, to create, and it's important anyway, we're not dismissing it here, it's important, but it can be even the way, that desire to cultivate these mind states, for instance. So becoming that happens there with that. And it can be then the becoming of craving for, say, a new car that we might think is pretty hot, right? I always use that marketing term where you see the ad and there's the beautiful woman draped across the car. It's like, oh, I'd love a car like that, right? So it's this thing where we're creating a sense of self in regards to something. It's becoming. Again, it's important that we're not pathologizing these things, but it's like getting to know this what's called the flood of that. So it can be in the positive, I want that. It can be in the I don't want that thing too. Like mana is called this thing of mana, the conceit of how we create a sense of self. We want something or we don't want something is equally creating a sense of self. And I remember that in childhood for me when I was seeing my parents fight like nuts. And I remember thinking, I don't want to ever be like that. And that was like that, a sense of self being created there, which actually took a bit of therapy to work that one out. It was actually this aversion to things. And they talk about like a sense of a trance in a way that this brings. This trance, like the trance of beauty, the beautiful partner, the trance of any other sort of beauty that we get locked in the sense of that, how we, in a way, identify with that trance. And a simple way of thinking too is like, if you practice being like mean and harsh, then that's what you get good at. That's what that's what gets created in the mind, meanness and harshness. If we're creating, or if we're then setting in motion compassion for our partner when they're being difficult, then also we start to get good at that. Right? So this is becoming as well. So it's like the skillful use of this. What's important to note in this is that it was part of the origins of this particular practice is that it was noted that the Buddha had developed a very, very strong those qualities of parami were very strong in the Buddha. The awakened mind, you might see the awakened mind of generosity, where these things were cultivated to their fullness. And that's where then the teaching came from. So we want to have a very healthy relationship with becoming. As I said, it's sort of like the rich fruit of meditation they speak of is the thing that then is supported by this through generosity, through the ethics of how we relate to each other. Yeah, that's what lifts us out of that flood, the flood of becoming and views. So the next two are views and the flood of ignorance. When you think of the flood of views, it could be anything from like Buddhism is the best religion, which some of us might hold that one, to say the Liberal Party is very fair and even with how they deal with people, right? Women are hopeless drivers, maybe. Men are fill in the blank. Views, the flood of views, and it's important to note here. It's not the view itself; it's how tightly we hold to it. Views will always be there. It's that sense of being locked in it that this flood speaks to. You can see that through history. There's different views that have had a big impact. and a very harsh one at times. The Inquisition, witches, consort with the devil, right? Second World War, views about Jews needing to be, they're contaminated, need to be eliminated. So you can see how these things can have a very, very harsh and deadly effect. So we can have views about countries, people, sorts of things. And so the thing, one of the things about this is that the view, it isolates us, actually. It isolates us from reality. Because whenever we're really stuck in that view, then it's kind of hard to relate to others. If we're just locked in our own ethical standards and not in relation with the ones that are around us as well. And it can also then have a sort of lifting in a way that we're better than others. Our view is right, the others is not. Grandiosity, the others are less than at some point. So there's a lovely piece here from this beautiful writer, Ludwig Max Fischer, who translated this book. Might have even read this last time, I don't know. The Seasons of the Soul from Hermann Hesse, some poetry that's never been translated into English before. I probably did read this before, but bear with me. So this is not Hermann Hesse's words, this is Ludwig's. He says, is it not amazing how many ways we invented to run from love? Some of the most common defense systems against love are irony, cynicism, criticism, and abstract theories, which all lead to superior, objective, untouchable positions and unassailable perspectives. Eventually, an aching longing and an increasing vulnerable loneliness, though, will make us leave those cherished states of elevated righteousness. And before long, hopefully, the call of love will knock on the doors of our control towers, where we hide frightened and isolated in the fake cocoon of well-insulated invulnerability. Couldn't have said it better myself. Beautiful book. The Seasons of the Soul, beautifully translated. So this is the flood of views, and then lastly, the flood of sensuality, of ignorance, sorry. Like all of these previous three views are then actually supported by ignorance, by the way that we tune out. We don't investigate, we just take for granted that something is true or just the way things are. And this is the force that actually undermines our direct experience. It's the one that you might go to workshops, for instance, and learn all these amazing skills. But like I say, sometimes when people come in, let's work with a part of you that doesn't use those skills. That's ignorance. That's a whole nother area. It can be resistance at a subtle level. It's a turning away from. Like in meditation, it can be a sense of, oh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to look there. Ignorance. Yeah, so it's a way we can adopt, just a couple of points on that before we finish up, that there's two things here. One is that we can adopt a pessimistic view about things, but we can also adopt an irrationally optimistic view about things. Both, in a way, are turning away from direct experience. The irrationally optimistic one is kind of like a way that we live in a kind of fantasy world of maybe things would be better there. And this often happens with children who have had a bit of a tough upbringing, where they'll start to create a little world up here to get them by. Yeah, it's a kind of ingenious way to do it, right? Problem is, it stays with us through life. It takes a little while to undo. But then at the same time, there can actually be the pessimistic one working as well. Both can be there. The pessimistic one is like the cynic, right? What's the point? There's another way of delusion shows itself. There's many ways. But of course, the ultimate thing here we're talking about is the Four Noble Truths, that we're using that as this way out of ignorance. And this is, we're coming back to tie it up, where the parami then, this Ajahn Sucitto from the Thai forest tradition said it beautifully. He said, they're a temple from whose vantage point we can investigate the floods. A sweet way of saying it. So they're a refuge. They're a temple from whose vantage point we can investigate the floods. And briefly, then there's like 3 stages. Initiating, it's kind of like, I've heard someone talk about this with developing habits. He said, it's like the first 20 times we do something, it's kind of torturous to get a new habit going. It's like, okay, I can do it. We're using all this fake strength and whatever to try and get it going. It's kind of like initially the initiating phase. And then the gathering stage is where we're really just sort of like, we've got a little bit of momentum, we're getting it going. And we're sort of like just continuing to refine it and to understand it. And we come up with all sorts of blocks where, something else doesn't really want to do it, but we're sort of seeing some good benefits. But other people don't see the point. Can't they see that it's important? Maybe our family. And then sometimes it's not convenient as well. It gets in the way of my morning coffee. And like this beautiful American man explained, he said, yeah, that's sort of like 20 to 60-ish, something like that goes. I think it's more than that, quite frankly. It's more like 1,000. And then the completion stage is like, where they're just they've got a roll on, it's like, oh, gee, that's actually really nice. That's so nice. It's actually working. and we don't even know we've moved into that stage in a way, but it's so easy then to just turn the mind towards goodness, towards wholesomeness, towards love. And it's going, oh, it actually does work. It does work. Yay. And as we stay with that, then it's like a sense of like, well, actually, it does work this much. Why don't I actually really work at that to establish a dead set strength in the mind? Yeah. And then, the floods, they don't overwhelm in the same way. Not for so long. Yeah. And Ajahn Sucitto and again says, like, as we get clear in that respect, that's enlightened self-interest. This sort of, as we see the benefits almost as well, that it sort of gives us that little momentum to meet the resistance that we meet as we stand up for those qualities more and more in our family and our relationships. Because we definitely will meet resistance from others in particular when we start opting out of negativity, for instance, complaining, and all those joyous things. So how about we finish up there? If anyone wants to hang around, we can have a little chat and a bit of a rave about that. I'd love to do that. And I did